our Pass It On Network 50/50 series. This is a final session in our series on work, all about work. And tonight we're going to be talking about the right to work and the right not to work. So we extend an extremely warm welcome to everybody. And as we have asked you, as you've come in, please just enter into the chat box where you are, your name and where you're from, because we do then send out the chat box afterwards and people like to see. We are, as you've seen, going to be recording this session. So if you need to, you can come back to it. With our 50/50 structure, it falls into two parts. The first part is we have a wonderful moderator and we have two guests who introduce our subject. And the second part is where everybody has the opportunity to pose questions and to give their insights. Just one question, one point on that. If you please use the chat box to pose your questions, it would help us if you just put a Q in front of a question or an I for an insight. As one always asks in these things, please keep yourselves muted unless you're wanting to talk. And because we have this 50/50 approach and we like to give people as much time as possible to talk and to express themselves, this Zoom will last for 1 hour and 15 minutes. But as it is being recorded, if you need to pop off around about at the top of the hour, please feel absolutely free to do so. And towards the end, we're going to put a link into the chat where we ask you to please give us feedback on the 50/50 series so that we can always go on and improve more and more as we get into this. So having said all that housekeeping, I would now like to introduce our moderator for the evening. And our moderator is Dr. Jan Hively, who is the co-founder of our Pass It On Network, a social entrepreneur who's absolutely tireless about the work that she's been doing and has been doing for so many years, for decades, on transforming communities and what they think about aging. Jan's own mantra about aging is meaningful work, paid or unpaid, through the last breath. And she's an outstanding example of that. You can read a fuller biography of Jan in the chat. And now I think without any further ado, let me hand over to Jan, who's our moderator for the session, and she'll be introducing you to our guest speakers. Jan.
Thank you so much. Moira, by the way, typically is in Paris, France, but she's on this wonderful vacation now in Cape Town, South Africa, and enjoying seeing our liaisons there, right, Moira? And when you talk about me and work, to be honest, I think that the word workaholic may be attached at some point in my life to my tombstone, perhaps. But in any case, it does feel like a long time since our last 50/50 conversation, which was in March. And here we are at the end of April. So much has been going on in the world that demands our attention, including a new season of the year, wherever we are. We were talking, Vijay is talking about really the start of winter, where he is in the middle of the Indian Ocean. And it's very different here because we're really talking about forsythia. Last month, we explored the meaning of work. While our societies tend to define work as paid employment, many older people are doing unpaid work, what's often called informal work. They're caring for others who are sick or disabled, or they're caring for their grandchildren, or they're working in the garden, or simply helping their neighbors. Even though their unpaid work contributes to the community's social and economic welfare, informal work is usually disregarded and older people are labeled as dependents. That perception contributes to the ageism that pushes older workers out of paid employment based on their age rather than their health status or their career interest. Belittling informal work also denies financial support for hardworking caregivers who do not qualify for occupation-based pensions. So today we're taking the conversation another step to talk about advocacy for policies that recognize the value of both paid and unpaid work and the potential for active, positive aging lifelong. We want the right to work. Now, unfortunately, in the US, that's taken on an anti-union flavor. But what we're just talking about here is simply the right to be employed as long as we want to be employed. And we are qualified to do whatever the job is that's open, that hopefully is open to us. It includes doing away with arbitrary age barriers and extending paid work as long as the worker wishes to participate and remains productive. We also want to claim the right not to work, to receive some basic income, even if we don't qualify for an occupation-based wage or pension. So we hope that the two presenters and the discussion that follows will encourage you to promote these policies where you are active as a positive aging advocate. That's what the Pass It On Network is all about. We're all advocates for positive aging, positive active aging. Our first presenter, who is Hans Gudmundsson, is from Iceland. He will talk about his country's policies with regard to working in later life. And the second presenter, Vijay Naraidoo, will offer the global perspective reflected in his day-to-day advocacy through the United Nations. Both of our presenters come from islands, Iceland in the North Sea of the Atlantic Ocean for Hans, and Mauritius in the Indian Sea east of Africa for Vijay. Both rapidly aging countries are seen to be progressive in their public policy making. Labor market participation in Iceland, by the way, is the highest in the world. Although Hans Gudmundsson had a long and distinguished career as a physicist, he has focused his attention on leadership for third age universities, for the Pass It On Network, and for a number of other third age organizations since he retired in 2012. He has organized international cooperation in research and education to help spread information about what works, including best practices for workplace flexibility and financial security in retirement. Hans, tell us about yourself and work and Iceland. And you want to unmute. Good.
Yes, thank you very much, Jan, for your kind words. Iceland is on top of the GRI index, which is Global Retirement Index. I just learned that, and I'm not sure whether I agree with that, but anyway. First, many thanks for the opportunity to share from some facts and opinions on the situation in Iceland concerning policies and opportunities to work and not to work in later life. Iceland is a small society, as you probably know, around 345,000 inhabitants with a relatively well-developed welfare system. In 2016, the life expectancy in Iceland was estimated to be 81 years for men and 84 for women. And labor market participation by older people in Iceland is, as Jan mentioned, very high compared to other countries. In 2016, 84% of the cohort 16 to 74-year-olds were working. And 40% of people aged 65 plus were still in the labor force. And this is by far the highest percentage in the world. In Europe, Estonia comes next at 26% only, and the OECD average is estimated to be only 14.5%. The average age of starting retirement in Iceland in 2016 was around 70 years for men and 67 for women. The right to, this seems very nice, but it is not all that nice. The right to work, as long as you feel fit and interested, however, is still hindered by several challenges related to ageism in our society. One of these barriers is that employees in public service cannot hold their positions beyond the age of 70, according to law. The legal text stipulates that employees shall be laid off from the first day of the month following their 70th birthday. Discrimination is also found in the private sector, where many enterprises force employees to retire, or in the meaning of leaving their jobs, based only on age. Often is this between 65 and 70. Obviously, these barriers waste talent and human resources for the employers and for the society. And considering that many people in this age range are healthy and may have decades of active life ahead, being forced out of their work environment must surely be detrimental for their mental and physical health. Let's look at the right not to work. In other words, basic economic security for older adults who have left the labor market. The Icelandic pension system is based on 3 pillars: a tax-financed public pension program. Second, a mandatory savings in collective occupational pension fund operated by the labor market partners. And third, a voluntary private pension savings encouraged by tax incentives. The required statutory age to receive a public pension is 67 years. However, with some flexibility, because you have the option to start receiving the public pension at 65 instead of 67, but with a reduced pension. And there is an incentive for delaying the receipt of one's public pension to age 80, with a yearly increase in pension entitlement. And the occupational pension funds allow, this was the public funds I'm talking about, the government funding. But then the occupational collective funds allow the start of pension payment between 62 and 70 years, some even at 60, but then with reduced payouts. So that when planning one's exit from the labor market and start receiving pension benefits, there are several available options. But your choice will depend not only on your forthcoming public pension, but also on what you are entitled from the collective occupational funds, which reduces the public pension. The right not to work or to retire with retirement benefits is thus relatively well defined with flexible age qualifications. However, the system is complicated and the interplay between the 2 mandatory pillars is very controversial. The public pension is reduced based on salaries from work and based on the pension payment from the occupational fund. And this significantly reduces the incentive to work, as such works may not significantly increase your net economic benefits. In planning life and work, I can tell you that in our work through the U3A, the University of the Third Age in Reykjavik, we are encouraging our members to prepare for later life and do it sooner rather than later. Before or when entering the third age, 50 plus or 60 plus, everyone should stop, think of their unfulfilled dreams, their strengths and interests, and not hesitate to reinvent themselves, to change their employment situations, explore new frontiers, start something new, for example, through self-employment. This period in life should be, and don't forget that, this should be the golden age of adulthood. When looking at the situation in the labor market, however, age advocacy is needed. We need to raise the awareness of the resources inherent in people coming of age. They should not be wasted by creating stupid rules and systems limiting their possibilities. Raising awareness starts with ourselves. Remember that. To believe in our strengths and abilities. We should not forget that the experience and knowledge of this group of people are important for the progress of society. A little story from our situation. In Iceland, we are allocated an ID number based on our date of birth. This ID number is used everywhere in society, in all communication, more or less. Sadly, this number makes employers easily and reluctant to even call older applicants, for an interview, as age tends to be the first criterion to sieve out undesirable applicants. This is the tragic issue of age discrimination to the workforce. Recently, there's a very interesting story. But recently, however, an employer got us started on this task of raising awareness. The owner of a restaurant that recently opened in Reykjavik put out an advertisement seeking only employees aged 60 plus. When interviewed, he said that those were the most valuable and reliable employees he could think of. He received, of course, overwhelming response from interested job seekers and actually hired several of them, the oldest being around 80. The fact that this turned out to be a big news everywhere, this reflects the general lack of community awareness about the value of older workers. Well, these were some facts and opinions, and I think I end this by concluding in 2 sentences. Firstly, flexible support systems are necessary, both for the right to work and the right not to work. This is, of course, true not only for older people, but also for other groups in society, such as disabled people, their families taking on the role of caring, etc. And secondly, societies that see older persons as a burden and push them out of work into the arms of the pension systems based only on age are wasting human resources. To force people out of employment at a predefined age by law or tradition is discrimination and breaches human rights. Thank you very much for listening. I look forward to discussing with you.
There we go. Thank you so much, Hans. Thank you. And we're going to go now from a country perspective to a global perspective with Vijay Naraidoo. As the Deputy Director of an international human rights organization based in Mauritius, Vijay is a strong advocate for a UN Convention for the Rights of Older People. He's a leader in several human rights advocacy organizations, including the Stakeholders Group on Aging for Africa. An experienced teacher and public relations officer, Vijay has been invaluable to us as the Pasadena Network liaison, who is the vice chair of the Global Alliance for the Rights of Older People. So please tell us, Vijay, about the status of international support for work and economic security in later life. Vijay. You still need to unmute. There we go.
Thank you very much, John. Thank you. It's a pleasure for me to pair with Hans. Before getting to the international stage, I should like to say that we have a similar, more or less similar type of legislation in the country with regard to employment of people, retirement. However, the retirement age is 65, whether it is in the public or in the private sector. And then people continue to work beyond 65, even in the public sector. Once people have retired, it is possible for them to work, continue to work on contract for a period of 1, 2, or 3 years. And in the private sector, there too, depending upon the specialization of the employee, he or she had the opportunity of continuing to work in his or her sector. Now, those who work in the private, self-employed, like doctors, well, they continue working. The legislation is silent. They are not told to stop working. They choose to stop working at the age which they choose to stop working. Because I know of doctors, specialists who, at the age of 75, with their experience, and are very popular, and they are looked for to treat people. Now, with regards to what we have been doing from GMA perspective, how we have grown from the grassroots to the international stage. Now, myself, I am what people call an older person of the old age group, which means that it was easy for me to develop that empathy with regards to the rights of older persons. True, we have to sensitize younger people as to the rights of older persons. True, we have to work to address working adults. Still, we believe, because we have that experience, that older people can share among themselves with their counterparts and gather, capture the feelings of older people. This is what I've tried to do. That is, going around the country, talking to older people. Yes, we have been talking to women, to younger people, students. We have been talking to older people in order to develop, to obtain the locus standi, that is the legitimacy and the legitimacy to talk on their behalf. So on the continental level, we have been looking for, through our government, to sign the EU protocol, which was developed in January 2016, the EU protocol for the protection of older persons, which the government, state of Mauritius, signed on 14th May last year. Now we have got of the signature, we have got the ratification. Now, what our organization, we have got the Commission for the Rights of Older Persons. So we negotiate with the government to go ahead with the ratification, which hasn't yet been done. Now, on the international, on larger level, we have been participating in the open-ended working group on aging. Throughout the years, the government of Mauritius has supported and spoken in favor of the open-ended working group on aging. I don't have details of the position of Mauritius this year at the 12th session. I shall have in the days to come or in the weeks to come the position of Mauritius. Now, the fact that the government recognizes that there should be a convention for the rights of older persons. So it implies there's an implication that once that open-ended working group on aging has developed the content of a convention, drafted, approved the content of the convention, Mauritius would naturally ratify and takes its time to sign and then to ratify. However, the contents of the convention should include the rights of older persons in all perspectives. The right to go out, the right to meet friends, the right for food, clothing and housing, the rights to choice, the right to write, the rights to think, independence, autonomy, all these have to be included in the convention. So when a committee would start to draft, whether they are economists, sociologists, psychologists would start drafting, we are expecting, if we are not invited, still we are going to submit papers to that committee to tell them to include these rights. Because even we agree, we have got a shared understanding of the rights of all the people. But it's still, I think it is, the onus is on us to keep this agenda live on the agenda. That is, we are not going to sit on our laurels saying that yes, government has fully supported. Now we are waiting for the government. No, we are going to invite ourselves in the process of writing the convention. I think this is legitimate. This is legitimate. We are going to do it. Now, we shouldn't be, I think, we have been discussing in our organization, we shouldn't be the only one. We should gather as many voices as possible. For example, for those who had been at the open-ended working group in April, a few NGOs have been there. So many of our colleagues have been there. So we have to build a coalition of these NGOs. For example, what we have done in the Indian Ocean, it is not a question of saying that we have done this and we have done that. It is verifiable. We have got evidence. This is what I'm talking to you with confidence. A DMOA has been created in Madagascar, initiated with our activists in Madagascar, the Seychelles, in Rodrigue, in La Réunion, of course, Mauritius. Now, we have built that coalition of DMOA in the Indian Ocean, Southwest Indian Ocean. We want to speak as one voice. So there is not going to be any dissenting voice with regards to the open-ended working groups and the rights of older persons. So inside that convention, the articles of that convention will have to be domesticated inside the legislation of the country. And when it comes to discussing in the legislative assembly, in government, the party in power, government, the opposition, civil society will have to express itself on the rights of older persons, the right to work and the right not to work. Because the government, the legislation is silent on the question of the right not to work. Silent in the sense that if you want to work, you can work. Of course, we'll have to take into consideration the conditions of work with regard to security, to health, and to matters of whether you're adding value to the production or productivity of the place where you are working. These things have to be taken into consideration because already there are trade unions saying that once you have got your pension, you have to stop working because you have to make place for younger people. That is the ageist attitude or ageism that we always speak of. But then, when we write in the papers, when we go out, we have been talking to trade unions, by the way. We tell them the right to work is inscribed. It's even the ILO speaks about the right to work. The ILO, International Labour Organization. What does it say? It says, give me 1 second, please. First, it says, Article 6 of the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. The state parties to the present covenant recognize the right to work which includes the right of everyone to the opportunity to gain his living by work. This is the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. Now, ILO, Older Workers Recommendation 1980, paragraph 5. Older workers should, without discrimination by reason of their age, enjoy equality of opportunity and treatment with other workers as regards, in particular, access, taking account of their personal skills, experience, qualification, except in exceptional cases, age limits, which means that the ILO, International Labour Organization, which is an emanation of the United Nations, has recognized the right of older people to work. Therefore, when writing the content of the convention, the articles of the convention, we'll have to take these articles into consideration to harmonize the content of the convention with existing covenants and recommendations. Before I end, I should like to show you a photo. I don't know whether you can see it. Can you see the photo? Right?
Yes, we can see the photo. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So this is a picture which I took 2 days ago because I wanted to use this to show you an older laborer. It is a field worker whom we call a laborer. She's 65. She has been pensioned off, and yet she comes back to work because, like her, there are people who want to keep their standard of living as they were working before they retired. Then it's self-worth. You know, once they have stopped working, excuse me for the expression, they feel inadequate. They want to be useful to society, to their family first, to society, to keep their income level even, and they are contributing to the economic and socio-economic development of the country. This is the end of my presentation, but I should like to obtain questions, and we are going to open the discussion. Thank you very much for your attention.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Vijay.
Thank you.
And Osnet, I wonder if you could help us engage our meeting participants in the conversation now about employment and financial security in later life. But I can't not say that I want to draw special attention to somebody who's here. Famada Shaman from Durban, South Africa is here. And I'm just so moved that you got here, because Famada is responsible for aging services in a city that has been flooded in the last week. Just appalling storms, rooting out trees and roadways and so forth. Thank you, Famada, for being here. And we're so glad that you have survived. Thank you.
Hi, Jan. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for acknowledging my presence. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye. So here we are. Osnet, can you help us with the getting people engaged?
Yes, so you can use chat and put questions or insights there, or you can also raise your hand, and you raise your hand by, there's a little button called reactions, and there's a thing there that's choice to raise hand, and we'll call on you. I think, Jen, from previous conversation, we had at least one person in this forum that mentioned the mandatory age, and maybe we can get this, her perspective too. Rebecca the Coco, if you're there, would you tell us a little bit about your experience while we let everybody else formulate their questions or insights? You can unmute yourself and come on board.
Osnet, so sorry because I came very late, but fortunately I managed to get what Hans and Vijay were saying. And let me just talk a little bit about retirement age in Botswana and what it means for older adults' right to work and not to work. Retirement age here is 60 years. It used to be, no, the early retirement is 55 years, and late retirement is 60 years. But you find that at times, even going to 60, we are even given some incentives so that we can exit employment at an early age. Botswana is a bit different from other countries because only 5% of its population are older adults. So the majority of people are in their youth, about 40%. So many people believe that when you reach 45, you are old enough to go and do something out and leave the younger people to work. However, we still have, we still see people being at work beyond 65. Let me give an example of myself. Just recently, a big position was advertised in the Botswana Defense Force, the first dean of the college, of the military college. And I said, okay, I am who I am. I'm just going to apply and see what is going to happen, whether they're going to use age or not, because I'm already 65. I applied, and I just happy to say that I just started working there in March 2022. I'm the first dean of a military college, and I'm enjoying myself. But this did not actually just come without complaints from people in terms of how do they take an old person in a position like that when they are young people there. I want to say that talking about the right to work and the right not to work, we should actually think about two phases and think about these two phases very serious. The first phase is the phase on the right to work on paper. In other words, in terms of statutory regulations. And then those ones for me are not a problem. Any country can develop that. And my country, I know, is very good at coming up with documents like that. But the second phase of implementing and ensuring that indeed older adults have the right to work is the one that we should actually be focusing on, because when I listen to the two presenters, I really don't think that we have actually made any headway in the implementation of letting older adults work when they feel like working or not working when they feel like not working. There is still that issue of ageism, looking at their ages and then telling them it's enough because of age. I wanted to ask Vijay about the retirement age in his country, because it is one country that seems to be doing a lot for older adults. But I think for now, that's my observation, that this debate is a very, very important one. And I have no doubt that many of us, we can move as far as coming up with legislations. But the major thing for me is, how do we implement those legislation? What structures are there? What platforms are there to ensure that indeed older adults are not discriminated against when it gets to employment? Thank you, Osnat. Those are my comments.
Great, thank you very much, Rebecca. I love the fire that comes out of every speaker so far. Vijay, before we let you answer that, maybe a couple more people want to have their opinions and insights. Luan, you have your hand up. Would you please join us?
Yes, thank you. And this is actually to Vijay and all of you, because one of the things I was thinking was that the argument has often been, we don't want older people to work because they're taking jobs from the younger people. And Vijay said that's ageism. That doesn't count. It's not meaningful to say that because there's plenty of jobs in many ways. I guess the question I have is, why, in a more personal and emotional way, why, if we are qualified, we have the experience, we are healthy, we can do a good job, why would they not want an older person? Why are there so many rules about older people? Are we just not the face that the corporation wants? What is the real objection to having an older person work in your company? And I don't know if there's an answer, and I don't know if the question makes sense, but what is the big deal about having an older person? I think as an older person, that's a real plus. But why do others not think it's a good idea to have older people working for them?
Can I just pass this to Jacqueline Stark for a minute? She's saying older persons cost more. Can you say a little bit more about that?
It's a little noisy in my background. No, I think that's the main excuse people use. Say, get a young person in, they're cheaper, and the older persons have more experience, they're more qualified, they do the job. Maybe they take a little longer when they're older, but they have many more qualities than younger people who make a lot of mistakes. I don't want to generalize. I think you can't generalize in any of these matters. But there are studies that show that older persons do not take the jobs away from younger persons. In Austria, I can say, if an older person retires, they get rid of the position. So you're not taking away someone's position. You're just making room for them to save money. Okay, so I think it's really the case that older people do cost money because they get a raise every 2 years in Austria. And yeah, where do you save money? You get rid of the most expensive parts. That would be my opinion.
Thank you.
Vijay, there are some questions here that were addressed to you, and I wanted to throw in maybe just another variation to this based on what Jacqueline just said, is people who want to come back to work and they left their position and they want to come back to work because they want to or need to, maybe starting from entry level, maybe starting from mid-level or whatever, if you can weave this into your answer as well.
Thank you, Snat. I owe Rebecca an answer with regards to how do we deal with all the people in Mauritius. Now we have got a population of 1.2 million, out of whom we have 252,000 older people are from the age from 60 plus. And we have got a handful, let's say some 100 people over the age of 100 years. Now, Mauritius is a country where older people obtain a non-contributory old age pension as from the age of 60. And this practice has been established since Mauritius was a colony of Great Britain in 1951. And after independence, the government of Mauritius has maintained the old age pension as a strong component of the welfare state. Even now, people they are going to stop, let's say, pension off at the age of 65, but they start receiving that old age, universal old age pension at the age of 60, which means that from 60 to 65, they have an old age pension, although they are going to retire at 65. Now, to tell you the consideration that the government gives to older people, the quantum may not be satisfactory given the cost of living that goes up and up and up, but this is what obtains with regards to pension. Now, with regards to possibility of extension working in the sector that the person has been working up to the age of 65, now it is mandatory. They have to stop working at 65. Now, given the, let's say, it depends on sectors. There are sectors like in the administration where people have had, experience. They have developed policies, let's say economic policies over the years. But these people are retained, even if the government has changed after an election, these people are retained, the services are retained, they work on contract 1, 2, 3, or 4 years during the mandate of the incoming government in order to ensure that the economy of the country is managed and on with regards to, even governments change, they have got the same economic policy. It is IMF and the World Bank that dictates. So they retain that economist or that person has been working as financial secretary. Now, if we go down the ladder, you've got people who have been working in the field. They have been manual workers working all their life as manual workers. Now, these people, their services are retained, they can enroll most of the time as security guards. Security guards, in the hotels, in the banks, in public buildings. Then nobody talks about ageism. Nobody talks about they are taking the place of younger people, because older people are more regular in going to work as security guards because they need the money. They are at the lower rung of the social ladder, of the economic ladder. They need the money, so they have to work. Now, with regards to the question of why is it that in some sectors older people are not, once they have pension off, they are not retained because of the health and safety conditions that prevail in the country. There are more risks of injuries, more risks of wounds, of health. Commitment of the employer is going to spend a lot of money if ever that person falls sick out of, they call that industrial disease. So these are conditions that have to be taken into consideration before they ever think of employing somebody after retirement. As I tell you, it's a question of flexibility. It depends upon, if you go in the private sector, for example, you've got the owner of a poultry, very large scale. He can employ people up to the capacity of that person to work. And then the person says, well, now it's enough for me, I'm retiring. So yes, there is the right not to work after pension, and there's the right not to work for those who are sick, or those who are on ongoing treatment, lifelong, treatment. They have the right not to work. And then if they cannot work, they receive a what we call a pension from the Ministry of Social Security in order to sustain their living conditions. I do not know whether I have answered all the questions, but if ever I've missed one, please remind me. I'm going to come back to you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Vijay. I couldn't help but noticing Janine's notice in the chat, talking about the assumptions that that society makes about the older people and how it gets in the way. Could you please briefly address this?
Sure. So, hi everyone, and I just love this session. So I just want to say that at the outset. It is so lovely to know that there are so many people around the world struggling with the same things we are. I don't know why that's lovely, but it makes us feel not alone. So part of what we do at Changing the Narrative, which is US based, is we have a campaign that we call the Age-Friendly Workplace Initiative. And basically we go out and we talk to employers. We make presentations. Michael Hare, who I think was on the call, may still be, has been a part of that. And what we do is we lead with many of what you have said, what are the benefits of older workers? And so we know there are really well-researched benefits that employers can gain from older workers. And then we say, so what are the things that get in the way? And what I put in the chat were the 5 stereotypes that we hear the most when we ask our audiences, so what gets in the way of you leveraging these benefits? And people say, of course, they cost. I'm going to go through all 5 and then talk about how we address it. They say cost more, that as older people, we are not willing to learn. If we stay in the workforce, and a friend of mine actually said this to me, Janine, I love this work that you're doing around older people, but if we stay in the workforce, aren't we taking jobs away from younger people? The myth that we are digitally incompetent. Well, you know, I see us all here on Zoom and most of us are older people and we seem to be doing just fine. And then the myth that they won't stay. So what we do is we allow people to kind of generate those. And then what we do, and this is of course based on US studies. So, you know, we operate in the US, so the research that we've compiled is US research, but costs more, not necessarily. You know, if we were talking about someone who's been in the same company and continuing to get raises, that may be the case. But then, you know, we encourage people to look at the balance about the loss of institutional knowledge, and that a lot of us as we get older, and I think this has been referenced before, prefer to stay in the workplace, maybe want to work less, maybe are willing to work, you know, lower hours, less pay, but we just want to stay in, right? To be engaged, to do work with meaning and purpose. Not willing to learn. Every study that has looked at that has said that is simply a stereotype, that as we get older, we continue to want to learn. The third, taking jobs away from younger people. Every US study that has been done from the Federal Reserve Bank, Stanford School of Economics, has shown that the lump of labor theory is simply false, that the longer actually we stay in the workforce as we get older, it creates more economic activity and more jobs. Now, again, I don't know how this transfers to other parts of the world, but in the US, every study that's looked at it has said that this is false. You know, the myth that we are digitally incompetent, there may be, in fact, some people who are digitally incompetent, but that's a stereotype. And, you know, and I'd argue that everybody here on this call is defying that stereotype. And then the myth that older people won't stay. So if I'm an employer and I hire someone and invest in someone older, they won't stay. And the US research that's been done on it shows that on average, older workers stay, they have 4 times the tenure of younger workers. So, you know, this is kind of what we do. So we basically, we talk about the benefits. We have people let us know what the stereotypes are. We refute the myths with evidence. And then we end with letting people know what are the kind of things that they might want to do to attract older workers. So, you know, we've had, during the pandemic, of course, this effort was set back, but now because we once again are facing in the US almost everywhere talent shortages, we're getting a lot of requests for these presentations. And I had 3 emails pop in even during this call that was like, when can I talk with you about where we can find older workers? So I think it's, you know, part of all of our work to just make sure those messages are getting out. Is that what you wanted me to say?
Everybody says, say yes, please. Thank you very much, Janine.
Okay.
I think it actually answered maybe a couple of the questions that were in the chat. I hope I'm not putting you on the spot, Chingen from Malaysia, but could you tell us a little bit about what's happening in your area of the world?
Sorry, did I just hear my name? And the audio is not very clear at my end. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Did you just ask me for my opinion?
Yes, like
right,
we
okay.
haven't heard anything about Asia, so please let us know what's happening there.
Well, I have to admit, I'm actually, this is my first time attending an event on aging. And I do not have a lot of exposure on that. The reason why I actually click into the Zoom link is because I accidentally chanced upon Pass It On network quite recently while I was looking for information on another organization. And that's why I subscribe for your messages and news. So I do have this interest in finding out more about initiatives that's supporting the aging group. But I have not done anything really substantial on it yet. I do not know whether it's fair for me to give an opinion. I mean, it's still an opinion, but I wouldn't dare to claim that I wouldn't dare to claim the degree of accuracy. In Asia, in Malaysia, I would say in Malaysia, since I'm in Malaysia, I don't find there's a lot of initiative supporting the aging group. We really, I have not come across any. Maybe it's my ignorance. But else, there's a lot on youth support. And I'm aging as well, so I like to, just see what I can do with respect to this group here in Malaysia, particularly. I come from an academic background with entrepreneurship, and I'm actually looking more in the aspect of entrepreneurship. So, which is why most of the conversations that's taken place today relating to employment is quite new to me, but it's very interesting and very eye-opening. And I appreciate all the sharing and presentations and the opinions that's been given. Yes, but I do have an interest, where my interests lie in relating to the aging group. I do wonder about, the prospects of entrepreneurship and reaching the lives of this group. And it would be great to hear, some of your opinions on that, other than just employment.
I'm just going to jump in here to say, Jane, that I hope that you will put your email address in the chat box, because we are definitely interested in senior entrepreneurship. Actually, as Famada knows, in South Africa, we are interested in presenting a program called Experience Incubator. Is that what we call it? I think it is. Which is a group, a circle of people who can work to see that they have the capacity and to look at different kinds of issues that they might want to work with. So it's an organization that comes out of the Institute for Global Entrepreneurs, which is one of our liaisons, Elizabeth Eisel, has developed. In any case, we'll get back to you if you just put your email on the website. Okay.
That's super. That's super. Thank you. I'll do that.
Yeah. Fine. Thank you.
Jan, we're at the top of the hour, so I'm thinking maybe let's whisper out loud here what we're going to do next.
Right.
So those of you who have to leave at the top of the hour, I put a feedback link in the chat. We're really, really interested in what you're what you're saying, what your impression was on this session, what would you like to hear in future sessions. And I'd like to pass it back to Jan for some takeaways, and then we can continue the conversation for another 15 minutes.
Wonderful. I just wanted to be sure that you think about this question in your country or your region. What's the most pressing issue regarding the right to work and right not to work for older adults? So you know what our website is, passitonnetwork.org. You just fill in the answer for your country, because issues are different in different regions, and we need to make sure that we kind of have some sense of what's going on where. I want to just also let people know who are going to be dropping off about our next upcoming sessions. For the next 4 sessions, May, June, July, and August, we're going to be talking about a series that talks about reweaving the web of life. So that's a small task, right? What we know is, as we feel the negative effects of climate change, storms and wildfires and flooding and drought, we human beings are increasingly aware of being only one species within an interdependent web of all living things, of all living beings. Scientists are telling us about the extinction of many species, birds and fish and coral, trees, but they're also reporting on the miraculous ways of nature through which the species interact and support one another. For example, we're now learning about the extraordinary capacity of trees to communicate through their roots and their branches. As stated in the Hopi Elder Speaks poem that inspired the creation of the Pass It On Network in the first place, the time of the lone wolf is over. As aging elders, we need to gather with our youngers and invite deep conversation about relationships and actions that will foster an abundant future. We are the ones we've been waiting for. So what we're doing is having 4 sessions, which will be dialogues involving olders and youngers who have something very important to offer. The first one involves a tree doc and a 16-year-old from Toronto who's been working on a global leadership project. That's Peter Whitehouse, who's also called the Tree Doc. The second one is going to be on living rivers and the rainforest from Brazil, with a guy from the Netherlands who is a naturalist who will talk with the chief of the Krenak people about the murder of their river and what's needed for a living river to rule in the Brazilian rainforest. And the third is going to be called Sanctuary, involving a woman, Kathy Bailey, and her family members who have taken off and they're creating a sanctuary with their different intergenerational roles that they've taken on. So here, and the fourth will be reflection for action that comes out of all of this. We're hoping that each one of you, as you look at this series, and it will be promoted through to all of our Pass It On Network subscribers, that you'll bring somebody younger with you to the next session. We want to be sure that we have intergenerational dialogue going on. And for Jing, for example, she can bring somebody older. That will be okay too. But I think that we want to have olders and youngers be able to continue the conversation, which gets started in each one of these 50/50s. And I think that it should be a lot of fun. The first one is going to be May 16th, always on Monday, always 50/50 conversation, an hour and 15 minutes in length. And now I'm going to say we have 5 minutes left. And I think we should just kind of continue responding to people who put up their hands and put something into the chart. But I do want to comment one thing first on the economic security. The Pass It On Network did submit to the Older Adult Working Group on Aging a statement looking at policy outcomes which can be claimed as rights in the UN Convention that we want to see in relationship to work and economic security. The first, of course, is combating ageism that affects all aspects of life. The second is eliminating all barriers to continuing employment so that we got flexible. It's flexible based upon the qualities of the workers, but also what the employer has to say, to have it be negotiated. In other words, based upon individual rather than a mandatory, certainly getting rid of mandatory retirement age. Third is access to free or low-cost skills-based education. The idea of extending employment in later life is inhibited by the lack of free or low-cost older adult education for digital literacy and other 21st century skills. We need to be able at any time in life to go back and get the skills that we need in order to be able to empower our productivity. And fourth is access to a basic subsistence pension plan for those who are not earning income. I was distressed, Hans, when you mentioned that if you get your occupational, the employer pension, in other words, the occupational group pension, then that's going to be subtracted from the public pension that you would be getting otherwise. So, I mean, that is ludicrous, but because it's really a penalty that comes across. And
this is exactly right, Jan. I mean, this is something that is extremely controversial in our society.
Right. Well, and it takes organization and advocacy, and that's what we're all about. So we're in the right place at the right time, apparently. Thank you all for coming, and Osnet and Moira, I'd appreciate your taking over at this point.
All right. Sylvia, you have had your hand up forever. What's happening there in Buenos Aires?
Yes, I only want to share that here everything is moving, and thank you very much, Vijay and Hans, because something that stands out for me is that really we need a cultural innovation very much, because when Vijay said doctors and self-employed are very popular when they get older, that's true. I would not change my 70-plus doctor for another younger. Yeah, and we are many. And also recalling that in companies tend to have retain people the most aged at the boards. Board members tend to be 60 plus and 70 plus, while the other employees have a difference. So that's something very important for me too. And I liked very much this changing in our stance, serve all ages, all living beings, because we are all together. And here, for example, Unilever, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it well, this big company, discovered the aged. So they called in 60 plus, and it was like a tsunami, and they are arranging ways to, apparently it's not employment, but they are hiring like a freelance, because people want to offer their experience and work, but 4 or 5 hours per day And that's wonderful. And something very important for them is that they did a campaign which is under the title Sescentennials. And it cost them nothing. It was shared at LinkedIn very organically. I don't remember how many they reached. So it was a tsunami, but a very good experience to build on. And Hans, your example of this restaurant, it's amazing. We have to, I think, visualize all those examples very much. So thank you for the opportunity to share this. I love it so much. And Jan, each time you mention this poem that it really addresses us, we are the ones. Who is we? All of us, no matter our age. Thank you so much.
Maybe it would be good for publicity. There's a film with Robert De Niro, The Apprentice, where after he's retired, he goes back to work. And it's really an excellent film showing how experience plays a big role in a company. And it was just a really good film. I mean, maybe to publicize that film as a positive example of what we contribute to the workplace.
That's great, Jackie. That's a great idea. I did want to mention one other person who's here, and that's Margaret Young. Margaret is in Vancouver. She has been ill, and in spite of that, she was able to speak at the United Nations Working Group on Aging. She did that via Zoom and presented statements for us. Both Vijay and Margaret are members, elected members of the You tell us what you're a member of, Margaret.
Oh, Vijay and I are on the steering group for the Global Alliance for the Rights of Older People, which has 390 member organizations around the world, all working together to get the convention. So we'll get it somehow.
Thank you. Thank you for representing us.
As you can see, we have got the same background, orange. I'm saying in French, veiller dans ses droits. And she's saying age with rights, having the same meaning.
Right. Yeah. Well. Thank you to everybody for being here and for this very lively conversation on a subject that is obviously such a vital subject to so many people around the world. And I think we just have to carry on to crack it, because there's just so much need to get through that and for people to carry on learning and earning and being able to live a decent life as they go ahead. Please, may I just remind you before we close that we would really like you to fill in the questionnaire that you can find in the chat. There's the link. It won't take you a long time, but it will be of invaluable help to us so that we can carry on improving. And without much more ado, we'd say thanks once again and look forward to seeing you the next time around. And I'm very sorry that we haven't had time to continue further because there's been tremendous discussion. And I'd just like to say hello to Carol Lenevanek from Calgary, who's just joined us, and also to David Oludari Mark, who's coming from Lagos. So we just really have to find a formula where more people can speak on every occasion. But right now, thank you so much to everybody. Thank you, Jan, for leading this with your normal brilliance. Thank you, Vijay, and thank you, Hans, and thank you for all the participation from everybody. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.